Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, now I decided to do a series that I thought you might find very interesting, and I'm going to call this series My World of Astrology. And in this series, I'm going to do snippets of my life as an astrologer. And what I intend to do in this series is to have segments throughout my life and how I learned astrology. And within this storytelling, some of it's pretty entertaining about my life and how I got into astrology, what it means, but most of all, I'll have little learning lessons also about astrology. And one thing is, I started as a Western astrologer. I tell you this transition from Western and how it all happened and what Vedic astrology means to me. And within these fun vignettes of my life, I want to entertain but teach you more about astrology while I tell my story of how it all came about. I've been into astrology since I was a little girl, as well as my teen years all the way up till now. And I have professionally been an astrologer for 45 years. So I have a lot to talk about, a lot that went on, and I'm here to entertain you, inspire you, and help you understand the most powerful, in my opinion, science of all, astrology. It is the divine science. And with that, I believe there is nothing more powerful in the world than to know your future. And yes, we're going to go into all of the fate versus destiny, free will, what astrology is about, and how we can use it most of all, and how it has affected my life. Many, many stories I can tell. And I think you'll love this series if you truly listen to all of it, because my intention here is to help and inspire, and most of all, let people understand what astrology really is and the power that it can give you in your life. Because I'm going to say this, there is nothing more powerful than knowing the future. And my mission here is to make Vedic astrology mainstream. So I hope you enjoy my new series. Thank you. So I want to continue on with some of my stories as a flight attendant and as an astrologer, because as I worked for the airlines, I had so many stories because, I was very careful who I told that I was an astrologer. And I would sort of feel around for information because there was nothing more fun to me than figuring out someone's sign. I would ask, certain questions without asking their birth dates, right? And then after a while, I'd just have to say, what day were you born? And usually I would get it right. It was really a lot of fun to guess people's sun signs, but most of the time you might be tuning into the moon or the ascendant. But I could tell what their sun sign was. I'll tell you how I did it. And this was actually back in the day that I was doing Western astrology. I would ask myself, do they come across like a cardinal sign? Cardinal is action-oriented. The cardinal signs are Aries, Libra, and Capricorn and Cancer. Those signs are real action-oriented. So if I felt like they were real action-oriented, then I'd say, okay, so it's a cardinal sign. Then the other thing I would ask myself, what element do they exude more? Is it fire, earth, air, or water? So the earth signs are, more practical, down to earth. The air signs are more talkative and more communicative. And the fire signs are high energy, going full force. And let's see, what did I leave off? The water signs. They're more sensitive. They say things like, I feel, where the air signs say something like, I think, because they're more into the thinking, and the water signs are more into the feeling. So I would analyze it from fire, earth, air, and water, cardinal, fixed, and mutable. So the fixed signs are going to be the signs that are more steady, more in their ways. They're fixed. They know what they want. So going into what we call the quality of a sign, which is cardinal, fixed, or mutable, I told you that the cardinal signs are more action-oriented, whereas the fixed signs are going to be more steady, more down to earth, know what they want. And the mutable signs are kind of like all over the place. So let me just tell you what those are. So the fixed signs are going to be Scorpio, Taurus, Leo, and Aquarius. And they're definitely more stubborn. So the mutable signs are the signs that are all over the place. They're kind of wishy-washy, kind of not so determined and knowing what they want, are fixed or stubborn. They're more adaptable too. So the mutable signs are Gemini, Sagittarius, and Virgo, Pisces. So once I say, okay, this person is, they're fast and furious. They don't slow down. They don't think too much about what's going on around them. They can be very self-centered in a way, but very rambunctious and fun and even complimentary. I know that that's a cardinal sign. But then I think about them being fiery. There's only one sign that is cardinal fire. So I would say Aries. So there's only one sign that can be an element as well as a quality. And once I put that together, that is how I was able to guess people's sun signs. And it was incredibly correct. I got people's attention all the time. Are you a Virgo? Are you a Libra? They were like, yes. How did you know? I didn't tell them all of what I'm telling you right now, but that is how I did it. So what I intend to do in this series is to give you a lot of teaching tools along with my life and some of the fun ways that my life unfolds. So I want to tell you more about when I was flying, some of my experiences with flight attendants that were definitely undeniable. The first one I want to tell you about is I was flying with, and I've talked to these flight attendants. They said, oh my God, use my name or whatever you want. And by the way, I have these stories in this book, Secrets of Prediction, and I tell about sort of like the biography of what I'm going through the series in the first part of this book. And I wrote this book in 2014 and 15. So getting back to one of the stories that was, listen, this stuff, there's no such thing as a coincidence when you talk about these stories, okay? This is some of my, and I am not making these stories up. So this story is about Lucy. Lucy, I was flying with her, and Lucy had just lost her husband to cancer. And within a year's time, she lost both of her parents. Things do happen in threes, but still, that was like, my heart went out to her. I felt so bad for her. So we're sitting in the jetway waiting for our flight. The plane wasn't there yet, so we had a little time. We're sitting on the floor, and I had my computer with me. And I said, Lucy, do you happen to know what time you're born? I was just interested to see what's going on in a chart that would cause so much heartache and pain and suffering. She says, as a matter of fact, I do. Are you kidding? She actually knew what time she was born. Who knows this? It's not into astrology. I don't know. So she told me her birth date and her time of birth. I plugged her chart into my computer, and lo and behold, I'm not kidding you, Jupiter was exactly conjunct her sun in the 7th house on that day. You know, this Jupiter takes 12 years to go through the whole zodiac. So for it to be exactly on that one planet in the 7th house of relationships and marriage, it's like, are you kidding? That was exact on that day. And, you know, it's going to be there for a few days, like about a week, that Jupiter is that same degree in her 7th house of marriage and relationships. Now, the sun is, you know, in the 7th house would be the marriage partner. So I'm looking at this and I said, Lucy, you're not going to believe this, but you are going to meet the man that you're going to marry today. No exaggeration. She said, you're nuts. That is the scariest thing. I am so uninterested in meeting anyone new. I'm still grieving for my husband. That's crazy, Joni, that you say that. And she was almost mad at me. But she, you know, then we got on our flight, and I can't remember. I think I was flying up in the front of the plane. So anyway, I was talking to the pilots and such. And throughout the course of this trip, I think we were with the pilots for 2 or 3 days, but throughout the course of this trip, I discovered that the pilot, he had lost his wife in a car accident about a year ago. I thought, wow, that is really, I wasn't even putting it all together, seriously. So I remember when we got to our overnight, and I remember, I think it was an overnight in Amarillo. I used to get these real exciting layovers, right? most flight attendants go to Paris. I go to Amarillo, Texas. Anyway. So I didn't think anything of it. And I do remember them going for a walk together the next morning. And I didn't think anything of it. Well, about a year later, I'm in the crew lounge. Lucy comes running up to me. She says, Joni, you are not going to believe this. And I'm like, what? She says, remember that day we flew together and you told me I was going to meet the man I was going to marry? And I told you were crazy, you were nuts? I'm getting married. And it's him. I was like, are you kidding? And I didn't know what to say, but always my response is, see, astrology works. But yes, true story. That's my story with Lucy. Let me move on to another story. And this is with flight attendant Carol. Carol came to my office for a reading. And the thing she was most concerned about in this reading was her husband's health. So I look at the chart and it looks fine. I said, your husband's fine. Don't worry about him. He'll recover. There's nothing to worry about. I said, for a while. She goes, what do you mean a while? And I said, well, he's good for a really long time. Don't worry. She goes, what do you mean a really long time? I said, well, it's a long, don't worry, it's a long time. She says, tell me. I said, do you really want to know? Something way in the future. I just told you that so you know you didn't have to worry for a while, for a long time. She says, what do you, tell me, when? All right already. So I looked it up, and what I did was I was looking at her husband's chart, and he was having heart trouble. So I was looking at the sun, because in a chart, the sun represents the heart of a person. So what I did was I looked at when Saturn was going to conjunct the sun in his chart, and it was 7 years in the future. So I looked it up, gave her the day that Saturn conjuncted the sun. And of course, she was fine. She was happy with that because her husband was fine, and he was fine for a long time. Many, many years later, I run into Carol in the airport, and she says, Joni, I want to tell you something. She said, remember that cassette that you gave me of our reading that you did for me? Well, I just listened to it the other day, and you predicted the exact day my husband died. I was like, I didn't know what to say again. Except for, yes, I am so sorry for your loss, but astrology works. And I only gave her that day because it was so distant. I didn't mean to do that. And I don't even think she worried about it, except for listening to the recording after he passed. Got one more story. This is much brighter. I'm boarding a flight. This was actually, I was coming back from doing a workshop in California, and I was flying back home to Dallas. It was really nice that I could fly free, by the way, as a flight attendant, to go do workshops and teach in all these different cities. I remember I would go around to all the NCGR congregations and give lectures about Vedic astrology. So every month I went to a new city to teach. This is when I was still flying, but I could fly for free, so it gave me the advantage to go anywhere and teach. And the NCGR is a organization that is so cool because they have all these communities in different cities where they have classes, monthly classes, and they bring speakers in. And I was ideal because you didn't have to pay. I didn't have to pay. I don't think they ever paid for your flight. Sometimes they did. Yeah, I take that back. Florida would pay for my flight, but I could fly for free. So anyway, I was coming back from teaching in California, and I changed planes. I remember it was in Houston to Dallas. I got on that flight, and it's a busy flight, and I'm trying to find a seat. And of course, you know, when you go on last because you're non-rev, you always get the last seats, which are middle seats. People aren't too happy when you sit there. Anyway, I'm trying to find a seat, and I hear somebody yell out my name, Joni. And I look over, and there's this, I mean, she was beautiful, beautiful woman. And actually, I don't remember her name right now, but she came up to me and she said, Joni, you may not remember me, but I'll never forget when we flew together 20 years ago. And she said, 20 years, you really had an impact and changed my life, because when we flew together, I was going through a divorce and my house burnt down. And kid you not, I barely remember anything about this because, you know, here's the thing. When I flew with somebody that was going through a rough time, that is when I tried to get information from them to help them, because, you know, there's nothing better than when you're going through a rough time to know when that time will be over, to have something to look forward to have hope. That's what I did with astrology. And that is one of the best things you can do with astrology. When people are in their dark, dark times, to be able to say, you know what? In less than a year, by November of whatever date, you will be better. Things will be better in your life. And this keeps people going. That is probably one of the most healing tools we have as astrologers. So, going back to my story, she had told me that she was going through a divorce and her house just burnt down. And I said, do you know what time you're born and everything? And back in those days when I didn't have a computer, I used to actually draw their chart out on a napkin and put in the planets that I could remember. And I knew where the transits were. I would base it on like their sun sign and where the planets were transiting relative to that. And I forgot what kind of information she gave me, but I was able to make a pretty strong prediction for her. I told her that you're going to be okay because you're going to get remarried and you're going to marry somebody wonderful that has something to do with the stars. She told me exactly that that's what I told her. And here it was. This flight that I was on was her husband's last and final flight. Now, with the airlines, when you've flown for a while and it's your last flight, they have all your family come on that last flight. And as it backs away from the jetway, they pour the plane, if you've ever been on one of these flights, with water hoses to commemorate is their last and final flight that they're flying as a pilot. So he was retiring, and his whole family was there to celebrate him. Well, oh my God, people got up during this only 50-minute flight, got up and spoke about this man that was her husband. It was so meaningful. He had so many accomplishments because guess what? He was, I laugh and it brings tears to my eyes too at the same time. He was an astronaut for NASA. And he had all these accomplishments for being an astronaut and in the service and all the amazing things that he did. So looking at this, going backwards in time, I realized that yes, he had something to do with the stars. He was an astronaut, and that's exactly what she told me. And she had the best life with him. He had given her so much. I mean, happiness, happy marriage, new life, wealth, money. They even adopted children. And I got to tell you, from this book, let me go in here because she also, on that day, she gave me her book that she signed to me on that day. And yes, here's what she wrote in it. And she said, it was a children's book, and she had with her her adopted daughters, and she gave me this book, and it said, "Thank you for your wisdom and beautiful heart." This is what made my trip. And to know that I helped somebody get through the roughest time of their life. What an amazing gift astrology can be for us all. So the one last fun story that I actually have in this book is whenever I would get on a plane, and we didn't have music, but you know, the planes had intercom systems. And somehow I started hearing the song, The Dawning of the Age of Aquarius. You all know that song. Who was it by? It was by The Fifth Dimension. Yes, it was Dawning of the Age of Aquarius. And whenever I heard that song come on the intercom, I was like, what is that? Why is that music playing? And then I realized the song, and I thought, I think I know who it is. Went up there, and there is this captain that I just love flying with because he loved my astrology. Very few did. Most of them thought I was weird. But then that was his way of telling me that he was on the plane and he saw me just bored, because I would go into the cockpit and I would say, "Is that song for me?" It was just a cute and lovely experience. So those are some of my fun stories from the airlines. I hope you learned something more about astrology. From each story, there was a meaningful lesson that I wanted you to get, not only about me and the fun times, but how astrology is so real and how it can help people. And it's just the most amazing science, divine science in the world. So with that, I thank you for listening.